will do what's good for you. I will.
Enduring night, a spectre of death.
Ladies and gentlemen, gather round, for I'm about to take you on a journey through two worlds of horror. Worlds where darkness doesn't just consume the body, it consumes the soul. These are not merely stories of monsters, but of human frailty, of love, of sacrifice, and the terrifying forces beyond our control. First, let's step into the world of Nosferatu, the 2024 remake of a classic nightmare. It begins in a town named Wisburg, a place steeped in an unsettling quiet. It's 1838, and the wind howls through the streets like it's trying to warn the townsfolk of something. The air is thick with dread, like the earth itself is holding its breath. Here, Thomas Hutter, a young man full of ambition, but lacking any sense of the darkness lurking in the world, takes on an errand that will twist his very soul. He's to travel to the desolate Carpathian Mountains to close a land deal with the reclusive Count Orlok, a deal that will be the last thing Thomas ever does, in more ways than one. Now, let's pause and examine the parallels between this and a plague tale. Innocence, set hundreds of years before, in 1349, when Europe is drowning in death. But it's not water that's flooding the streets, it's the plague, the Black Death, that has spread across the land like a shadow with no end. Amicia de Rune, a young girl, knows nothing of this impending doom until it arrives at her doorstep. Her family, once prosperous, is ravaged by the Inquisition, a cold, fanatic force that comes like wolves, hungry for control. And much like Thomas, Amicia's world is shattered in an instant, her innocence stripped away. Both Thomas and Amicia find themselves caught in a world that has stopped making sense. In Nosferatu, Thomas is drawn to Orlok's ancient castle, a place where time seems to have forgotten itself. The walls are decaying, the air thick with an unnatural chill. This isn't just a man's home. It's an extension of the Count's very essence. And much like the rats that ravage Amicia's world, Orlok is no mere mortal. He is something older, something far darker than the human mind can comprehend. As Thomas ventures deeper into Orlok's domain, he feels the unease seep into his bones. The Count is a being of the night, with hollow eyes and movements that are calculated, deliberate, and unsettling. It's clear that Orlok is not just a vampire. He is the darkness itself. His presence hangs in the air like a suffocating fog. And just as Orlok casts his shadow over Thomas, the rats of a plague tale, those horrific, mindless creatures, become a force that chokes the very life from the land. They are drawn to the death around them, feeding on the plague and creating an endless cycle of destruction. But the true horror, the true connection between these two stories, is not in the supernatural beings themselves, but in the way they manipulate the lives of the innocent. In Nosferatu, Orlok's true target is not Thomas, but Thomas's wife, Ellen. Through eerie dreams and visions, Ellen is drawn into the nightmare, sensing the Count's presence from miles away, her heart tied to a terrible fate she cannot escape. Much like Hugo in A Plague Tale, who unknowingly carries the weight of a curse, Ellen becomes a pawn in a game she didn't choose, one in which her very soul is the prize. She sacrifices herself to destroy the Count, just as Hugo's life becomes the key to the destruction of the plague in Amicia's world. In Nosferatu, Ellen's final act is a desperate one. She sacrifices herself to the Count, knowing that the only way to end his reign of terror is to give up her own life. As dawn breaks, the sunlight destroys Orlok, and the vampire is vanquished, but at a terrible price. In the end, Thomas returns to a world freed from the Count's curse, but he is forever broken by the loss of his beloved wife. And yet, even as the town of Wisburg begins to heal, the shadow of the sacrifice lingers, because there are some things that can never be undone. Similarly, in A Plague Tale, Amicia's journey is one of sacrifice and love. She and Hugo are running from the very thing that wants to consume them: the plague, the Inquisition, and the dark power Hugo carries within him. Like Thomas, Amicia is driven by a desire to protect her loved one, but she quickly learns that the world is not kind to those who are trying to do the right thing. Just as Orlok manipulates Thomas and Ellen, the Inquisition uses Hugo's curse to further their own twisted ambitions. And as the rats swarm, consuming everything in their path, Amitia realizes that there are no easy choices in this world. In the end, both stories come down to a single, unavoidable truth. The darkness that consumes these characters is not just a supernatural force. It is a reflection of the human condition, our fears, our desperation, and our capacity for love and sacrifice. In Nosferatu, Ellen's selfless act rips away the Count's power, but it costs her life. In A Plague Tale, Amitia must confront the terrifying possibility that her love for Hugo will drive her to make a sacrifice that may break her, may destroy everything she holds dear. The true horror in both stories lies not in the monsters or the rats, but in the lengths people will go to protect those they love. The sacrifices made are monstrous in their own right. But love, too, is a powerful thing. It can lift us, but it can also break us. And the question we are left with in both tales is not just what will we sacrifice, but who will we become in the process? When the rats are gone, when the vampire is vanquished, what's left is the shattered, haunted soul of the one who survives. What's left is the cost of love, and that perhaps is the greatest horror of all.